Hello, and welcome to In the Frame, Exploring the DIA. I'm Graham Beale, your guide to the Detroit Institute of Arts, and today we're going to take a look at our conservation department. Conservation is a very complicated business. It combines art history with science, intuition with extraordinary manual dexterity. Today we're going to go behind the scenes and look at these magicians who do so much to keep our art safe for ensuing generations. Every once in a while, conservators encounter works of questionable integrity, and here at the DIA, we recently had such a case. Lewis Hine was a pioneer in the fields of social and interpretive photography. He was the photographer for the National Child Labour Committee in the early 1900s, contributing to exhibitions and the organization's social reform magazine, The Survey. Among the first to use photos as a documentary tool, Hine shot pictures of immigrants at Ellis Island, slums and tenements, sweatshops filled with child labourers, French and Belgian civilians suffering from the impact of World War I, and America's undervalued blue-collar workers. In his words, Hine wanted to show things that had to be corrected. Lewis Hine died in 1940 at the age of 64. In 1998, Valerie Bass, senior paper conservator at the DIA, was examining photographic prints attributed to the famed American photographer Lewis Hine when she discovered something troubling.
I guess it started around 1998 when I was approached by several collectors who had been offered photographs by Lewis Hine that they thought looked a little too good, that they seemed very fresh. They were large format size, which Lewis Hine didn't really do very many of, and they had other odd characteristics. They looked artificially aged or marked in some way to make them look old, apparently.
After conducting sizing, fiber and chemical content tests on what were offered as vintage photographs printed by Hine himself, Bass determined that the photographic paper used was inconsistent with the paper available at the time. As a matter of fact, some of the optical brightening agents used on the prints weren't introduced until 1955, some 15 years after Hine had passed away.
We saw, in some cases, a very brilliant fluorescence, which is unusual for papers from the 1930s and 40s, which is when these objects were supposed to have been made by the artist himself in his own studio. We use various tools to examine works of art that are being considered for purchase or being examined for other reasons, and one of these tools is a high-energy ultraviolet light. This can show us differences in paper, media, sometimes the age of the object.
Other tests were conducted, and it became apparent that since Hine's death, someone who had access to the photographer's original negatives had made prints of his work, complete with forged signatures and other markings, and offered them to dealers who then sold them. Through shrewd investigating, Bass had revealed these prints to be forgeries and unveiled a major scandal in the art world.
It turned out that these prints that were being released to the market, probably for about 15 years before 1998, were enlargements coming from the estate of Walter Rosenblum, who was a recognized authority in the field of American photography. It's pretty unusual that we run into something of this magnitude in a museum conservation lab. The potential losses in this case amounted to millions of dollars. It makes it more interesting in some ways, and it is kind of like investigative reporting in that we have to do some research, background, find out information that maybe we didn't know before, and that's part of what makes our jobs interesting. At this point, many of the prints have been returned to the dealers and the money's been refunded to the clients that bought them. Some people have kept them, figuring that a print with the high negative is still an interesting photograph and that they can accept that. There may have been almost 600 prints that were released to the market, and there may still be more that are available to be released. And the problem, as I see it now, is that these things are still